main point of discussion for today is everything regarding notes. Why to make notes, how to make notes, and most importantly, what to make notes of. Okay. So the first basic question that I get many times is, students ask me, is it really necessary to make notes? Students, it's not a plain, is it necessary to make notes? Is it necessary to make notes? The tone is, what is the use of notes? Why should I make notes? Okay. This mindset, it emerges from a mindset of laziness. Making notes is hard, no doubt about it. I have no doubt that the three of you and the other guys online, who among you have actually tried to make notes some or the other time till today? Yeah? You? All three. Okay. Online, please raise your hands, whoever has tried to make notes. Not just UPSC. Whatever education you're doing, yes, Lakshita has made it, and I guess not the unnamed guest that we have, and Aishwarya, probably not. So you must have had this feeling till now. Yeah. You must have had this feeling till now that we start to make notes out of a common sense understanding. But after a while, we realize that there is no value addition. Notes making becomes a frustrating experience for multiple reasons. And one after the other, we decide that, okay, so Aishwarya and 9-1 guy has also made notes. Everyone present. After a point, we conclude that the notes as a concept itself is pointless. And then we let go of the topic midpoint and we say, I will study from my notebook, from my textbook, or the other notes which are available in the market. And then we rationalize and justify to ourselves that if someone else is already making those notes and giving them to me ready-made, why should I once again make the notes? The problem with this approach is that you are focusing only on the end product, the final ready notes. Those are valuable, sure. But the process of making notes is actually more important than the end product. When you are actually writing down whatever you are doing, the information is getting crystallized and consolidated in your brain. That is why you are supposed to make notes. Many a times we don't study the technique of making notes. We use the wrong technique, and that is why we don't get the requisite value from the notes, and then we just drop the whole point. So should you make notes? The answer is yes. Why, what, and how is what we will be covering today. So before going into making notes, there is a very important prerequisite question which you should be asking yourself. This one. What do you plan? The top red one. What is your primary source of revision? Where are you going to do your revision from? There can be two answers to these questions. The first one is your notes are your primary source of revision. The second one could be your book is your primary source of revision. In both cases, you are supposed to make notes, but the nature of the notes and the strategy that you use to make them will keep on changing. Okay. So these two types of notes, I call them as, one type of note is notes which are a substitute to your book. These are also called as comprehensive notes. So as you're reading the book, parallelly, you are making your notes. And the objective behind this is that once your notes are ready, you have no further use for your book. This is what I did. My preparation started in 2012. And across the years, I made notes from Lakshmikant. So when I was preparing, the latest edition of Lakshmikant was the 3rd edition. I purchased that, and then over the past 10 years, I have not purchased a single subsequent edition of Lakshmikant because I read the original edition, and then across the past 10 years, I have been updating my notes with current events. So whenever something new happened, even before Lakshmikant came out with a new edition where that current whatever change was incorporated, it was already there in my notes. So in all these Xerox centers, you get a compilation of the additional material. I used to purchase that. I used to read that. But most of the times I used to realize that all of this is already covered in my notes itself. Okay. So these notes, once your notes are ready, there should be no further need to refer to your book. And your notes are primary source of revision. Now, these notes are going to be pretty bulky. See, compared to the book, they are going to be small, but by the standard for notes, they would be quite bulky, and that is okay. Okay. But if you are in the mindset that most of the content is already given in the book, so why should I waste my time and effort trying to come up with separate notes which I am making? The first answer to this question I've already given you, because the process of making the notes consolidates the information in your mind. So that's reason number one. That's actually the most important reason. But a close second reason is the nature of your notes is going to be different. Okay. These second type of notes, which I have called as notes which are a supplement to your content. The supplement, as the word supplement indicates, the super sincere amongst you must have taken supplements in your examinations. I take supplements after my gym. But in both cases, we use the word after in the same sense that whatever proteins you don't get from your diet, it's something additional. Whatever, if your answer booklet given at the time is not sufficient, it's additional resource. And it is in this sense that these type of notes are going to be used. Your primary source of revision in this case is going to be your book, no doubt about that. But understand that no matter which book you are using, no single book is ever going to be 100%. At the most, the closest that goes to 100% is Lakshmikant. But even with Lakshmikant, I would say it's about 80 to 85%. If you flip through the PYQs past 10 years, you will see that there are quite a few PYQs, especially for mains, which cannot directly be answered from Lakshmikant. For prelims, Lakshmikant is pretty good. I mean, if for a particular year you are asked 20 questions out of 100 for polity, I can safely say that around 15 to 18 of those questions can be answered from Lakshmikant, but not for mains, and certainly not completely for prelims also. That is why you have to update your knowledge with current events. So there is a very nice quotation that I came across on the internet. This person, he was a topper. He said that where your book ends, your current events begin. So it's a wonderful way to put that. The latest edition of the book, he has all the data contained in the book up to a certain cutoff date. But for your purposes, your knowledge has to proceed even beyond the publishing date of the latest edition. So where the book ends, your current events begins. So in this case, the size of your notes will be small, and the purpose of your notes should be value added material. Now, this value addition does not always mean only current events. The major component will, of course, be current events. But let us say sometimes you come across a YouTube video. Maybe you come across a blog post. This is very nicely explained. You don't understand some topic from the book. So you go to the internet, you search for an article. The question is, you read the article once, you understand the article, and then you are naturally going to wonder that I want to save this article in some safe place for future reference. So you might save the link, you might download it as a PDF. There are thousands of options. But the problem is there is no link between your textbook and that URL. So maybe 1 month, 2 months from now, when you are once again revising the book, the chances that you will remember that I had read some blog post and where is the link saved, it might be in your Google Drive, it might be in your SMS, it might be somewhere in your notes. There are 1,000 digital places where it might be spread out. So the problem is twofold. The first one is 1-2 months, a significant time later, when your eyes are scrolling over the book, you need a visual reminder that there is a URL at this place and pointing to the place where you have stored that URL. So these sort of notes, there are still going to be notes, but they are going to be micro notes. Okay. The strategies that I am going to tell you about are equally applicable to both of these types of notes. Okay. But before deciding upon your strategy, you should decide for yourself, should I make notes? Yes. What should be the nature of the notes? That depends on where you are going to revise mainly from. Is it the book, or are you going to revise from your notes? Okay. So as I had said, the why, what, and how of notes. First, we have to go into the why. So why to make notes? What is the purpose of notes? And what am I going to gain from notes? So I've simplified all of this into a very short form, ICC. It's easy to remember, International Cricket Council. But this stands for, why do we make notes? For three purposes: integrate your knowledge, consolidate your knowledge, and compress your knowledge. Integrate, consolidate, and compress. Now, what does this mean? All of this is reflected in this one sentence that I've put at the bottom. Your notes are a reflection of the way that the information is organized in your brain. So if some of you were interested, I have about 3 books which I read before going into this topic. For me, making notes was always a very fascinating topic, because over the past 10 years, I realized that we consume a lot of content. It can be from books, but most of the content is actually, it's going to be in lectures. It is going to be in YouTube videos. It is going to be in blog posts. It is going to be in the current events magazines that we refer to, the notes that we refer to. The problem for me was that there are so many different sources from where we consume content. I cannot take it all in and create a single picture out of it. So I always used to understand that I read a lot, I view a lot of videos, but then I forget most of what I have viewed. For those few things that I do remember, I cannot remember where I read this. And if I'm presenting something before the students, it is very important for my credibility as a teacher to be able to tell you my source. See, this guy said that, this report said that, this book said that, because I am no one. I am just young person who has no experience in, compared to someone like maybe a Supreme Court judge or Durgadas Basu or even Lakshmikant, who have made a name for themselves. And this is an important point in answer writing also. See, we are no one. Let's not be under this egoistic assumption that I am saying this, so you should believe me. In your mains answers and your essays, you should always be able to quote your sources. Okay? And then as I introspected, I realized that this is actually a problem which majority of the students face. Your studies and the different methods that you use for study, they are contained in separate silos. And it's a lot of hodgepodge study. What we need is a central place to be able to bring it all together. That is the word integrate. So what over the years I have interacted with many students. See, they are very highly intelligent students. They are hardworking. They can sit for hours on end studying. Their grasping power is very nice. Their English reading is also very nice. So they tick all the boxes. But the problem is that they have no way of organizing the knowledge that they're taking in. And subconsciously, our brain is already doing that. But the brain is not the best tool for organizing the information. You need some external tool, which are actually our notes. So what I realize is that many times even this may have happened to you. When you are solving some PYQ or something, at different places and at different times, you have come across certain concept. Okay. But unless it is all presented to you in a homogeneous format, it doesn't stick in our brain. That is the way the human brain works. And that is the main reason that students prefer using textbooks, because this hard work of going out there, conducting research, gathering the raw material, collating it all together, and then presenting it in a consolidated format, All of this hard work is done by the author and you are simply expected to consume the content. But if you want to write an outstanding answer, you have to sort of get into the shoes of the author to create your own note. So the information is there at different places and across different times and through different sources. You have all read it or seen it some or the other time. But since all of it is so hodgepodge, it is so broken and so disintegrated that a complete picture does not emerge in your mind of that particular topic. And that is the role that our notes are supposed to play in our study process. So I can many a times tell us to how well a student has understood a topic simply by looking at his notes. If his notes are scribbled across the textbook, the handwriting is very bad, and if he has simply parroted the textbook, that's a very bad note. He's simply reproducing the textbook. But what are you supposed to do? Well, the first one is integrate. You are supposed to integrate. Now, what do we mean by the word integrate? So look at the image. This is a funnel. At the top of the funnel, you are putting in a lot of raw data. From the bottom of the funnel, your master note is emerging. So remember this word, master note. The end product of all of our efforts has to be one file per topic, which is your master note. And that main file will be your source of revision. Of course, if you are going to revise from book, the book is your master file and everything else is supplementary. But for comprehensive notes, your notes are your master file. Now, what are you supposed to integrate? First one is SRB and NCRT. You begin your studies, as I told you, by reading NCRTs. After you finish NCRTs, in the FAQs of NCRTs, I already covered this point. The two common questions that I get is, after I finish one reading of NCRT, do I immediately start the second reading? The answer is no. Go to the reference book. And second question is, after finishing NCRTs, do I start making notes from NCRTs? Again, the answer is no. Read your NCRTs, then go to your reference book. Then after, in your reference book, use the SQ3R technique that I told you. One chapter at a time. Scan the chapter, 7-second rule for questions. First reading is word to word, no underlining. Second reading is also word to word, but making boxes. Third reading is only boxes and underlining the important words. And then finally, fourth reading and subsequently, you can make the jump from your chapter, your book to your notes. So after your SRB is done, one chapter is done. Keep the book open and pick up a pencil and a page and then go on writing down the notes for that book. So simply what you're supposed to do is the important words from the chapter which you have underlined and the major points, reproduce them in your notes. As far as possible, try to use your own language. Of course, unless there are very technical terms that you are supposed to use that very exact term. Okay. So that is SRB book. Okay. Next point is, what about NCRTs? Okay. Now remember this very important sentence. You are making notes. Have you ever wondered what are you making notes of? Are you making notes of NCRTs? No. Reference book? No. Current events? No. Your notes are your topic notes. You are making notes for polity. And the raw material that is going into making your polity notes are NCRTs and reference books. So your beginning point of your notes has to be your reference book, not NCRTs, reference book. Okay. Then once on a particular chapter, your notes are ready. So I think your polity module has begun, right? Have you finished the chapter on preamble? Huh?
Maybe told that you are going to take that.
Oh, right, yeah. So I think you guys must have started with fundamental rights. Okay.
Now we have an emergency.
You must not have completed even I'm going to take fundamental rights also. Yeah, Parliament must have started. Right. Structure and composition of Parliament. Right. Good. Right. He must have given you the outline. He scared me for a second. He's stepping on my feet. Okay. So let's say, sorry.
We also completed the interstate relations.
Which relations? Sorry.
Interstate.
Interstate relations. Okay. Yeah. Got you. So, for example, Parliament. Okay. So the Parliament, it begins with the composition of Parliament, structure of Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. Now, this source, once you have made the note from reference book, what you can do is you will realize that if you go to your NCERTs, 11, 12, the relevant chapter, you will realize that 90% of the content in NCERT is already there in your notes. And this is why I'm saying that don't make NCERT notes separately and then the reference book notes separately, because you're wasting your time. If you do that and then you compare the two notes on the same topic, like Parliament, for example, you will realize that here there are 10 points and here there are 10 points. But out in the 10 points of the NCERTs, almost 9 points are already mentioned in my notes. So why did you write them again? Why did you waste your time and effort? The beginning point of your notes is your reference book. And everything that comes later on should be a value addition to your existing note. Never ever duplicate your effort. Your note making has to be structured in such a way that you never ever write the same thing twice unnecessarily. Every word, every sentence that you go on adding to your notes has to be something new. It can be a new fact or it can be a new perspective on the existing fact, but it has to be something new. Okay. And that is why I said, after you finish your NCERTs, don't go for the second reading. Don't go for the notes. Go for the reference book. You finish one chapter in your reference book, then make notes for that chapter. Then compare those notes with the relevant chapter in your NCERTs. And then you will realize that 90% of the content in NCERT is already there in your notes. And the minute 10% that is additional, that is something new, go on inserting it somewhere in between, arranging your notes, or you can like append it from the bottom. All options are open to you. Okay. So you begin with reference book, then you go on to NCERTs. Okay. The combination of both of them together, again, I'll repeat this sentence. The notes are the finished product. And till now, in our machine, which is making the notes, we have inputted the reference book and the NCERTs. Our notes combine information from both of them, delete the duplicates, and then come out with a consolidated unique version. Okay. So this is integrating SRBs and NCERTs. And in further slides, I will go into further detail. Okay. But then the next challenge is current events. The next thing we have to learn how to integrate is current events. The major problem that students face when studying current events is the news that reaches us. First of all, it reaches us in an unstructured format, especially if you are using newspapers. If you are using some ready-made notes like Byju's, Vision, Sunya S or whatever, what they do is they do the editing for you. They take the raw material, they compile it together, they segregate it as per the syllabus, and they present to you the finished product. Okay. But if you are reading the newspaper, sure, they have different sections like economy, IR, but the news reaches us in an unstructured way. And further complicating point is the news reaches us in a date-wise sequence. But we don't revise date-wise. We revise it subject-wise. So if today, or 16th of August, I am revising some topic, the newspaper that I'm going to be reading today is going to be a mixed bag of everything. There will be economy news, IR news, polity news. And then I have to take all of that into my machine. I have to segregate it into my topics. And the further important point is I have to link it with my parent content, the static content. As I've already told you, the static content is the basis upon which the dynamic content is supposed to be built. So there has to be a link between the two. Okay, we are going to see how to do that. Current events. And again, I'm changing the analogy now. It's not a machine. If we think of our notes as a dish that we are preparing, okay, the dressing on top, the masalas that we put at the end, those are our PYQs. So when you are preparing your notes, the final thing that you should be doing is go across your PYQs, and every time you read a PYQ, ask yourself, where is the answer to this in my book or my note? And immediately at that spot, insert the PYQ. So it's like the salt and pepper that we sprinkle on the dish at the end. At different places, PYQ should be integrated. Step number 1 is minimum 4 sources that we study from. Now, there may be a 5th or 6th also. For example, one common question I get is, how do I integrate internet content into my physical notes? I'm going to go into that. Or maybe you are not satisfied with one book. If you are interested, especially if you are studying about your optional, you are going to have to study from multiple books. And then you are going to have to take what is unique from each of the book and then integrate it together into a single master note. Step number 1 is the different sources that we study from. NCERTs, reference book, maybe a second book, then the current events, then the PYQs, and finally you may be using the internet like blogs or YouTube or whatever. All of this is contained in separate silos. Internet is one silo. Your bunch, if it is a stack of previous year questions on your shelf, is the second silo of PYQs. If you are maintaining a separate file for current events, that is a third silo. Your NCERTs are a fourth silo. And if you are making notes from NCERTs, which you shouldn't be doing, that is fifth silo. Similarly, reference book is your seventh silo. And if your notes are separate, that's an eighth silo. I hope you know what the word silo means, right? It's those rounded pillars, like the storage thing where they store wheat. Must have seen it in the images. It's a huge like tower thing, and then they go on pouring wheat or whichever crop they're storing in. But all of them are segregated from one another. For effective study, we need to bring it all together at a central location. This central location can be physical pencil and paper notes, or if you are like me, it can be digital notes also. And that point is also going to come later on. So step number 1 is integrate. Take all the data that you come across from different sources and bring it all together in a central location. Then step number 2 is consolidate. Again, if you're reading a book, why does the story, and forget if you're reading a story book, a novel. So when does a novel start to make sense to us? Because when we read it chapter wise, what if you pick up a novel, you read chapter 10 first, then you read 5, then you read 19, then you read 13. Will the story make any sense? No, right? It's all hodgepodge. Unfortunately, many of us, that is how we study. For the human brain, it's not only important that all of the information is given to you, but it should be given in a logical format. Okay. Every next concept should emerge from the previous concept. That is why we say that knowledge is like a building. Okay. How do we construct a building? We start from the ground up, right? We cannot construct the 4th floor hanging in the air and then 3rd and 4th, we go constructing the building both ways. That is how we build up our knowledge building. We start with the basics. Then based on those concepts, we pile on another floor. then another floor, then another floor. And what that means is that every floor underneath is taking the weight of all the floors above them. Okay. So unless all the information is presented to you in a consolidated format, it doesn't start to make sense. But once it is presented like that, we start to see the interlinkages between the topics. Okay, this point is related to this point, etc., etc., etc. So step number 2 is I took my static content. So what will happen? Practically speaking, you take your NCERT reference book, you make a note. Okay. Then you go to your NCERTs, you realize that out of 10 points, 7 points are already covered. So you skip them. But what about those 3 points? Where do you write them? There's no space. So somehow you turn over the page and you append it from below. Okay. This is not consolidated. And then you go on to current events. Then what about current events? If you maintain your current events in a separate file, there is no linkage between the two. If you, every time you come across a news article, you might wonder, okay, where does this go into my notes? You pick up the relevant page, you might not find space over there. Where do I write it? Maybe you insert a page in between. But all of this takes unnecessary effort. It creates a lot of friction in our studies. The technique that I am going to show you achieves all of these ends, but in a very simple format. I am going to tell you a lot of tricks, which each individual trick will not add more than 5 seconds to your studies, but it will achieve the aim of consolidating the knowledge. And then final step is to compress everything. Even the previous 2 lectures, all along my emphasis has been in reducing the size of the content, but not compromising upon the quality. And the notes, the point of making notes is to take this one step forward from the book to your notebook. Now, how are we going to do this? Okay. To achieve this end, your notes need to have 2 basic features, 2 characteristics of whatever you decide as your notes. Those 2 characteristics are flexibility is number 1, and the ability to cross-reference content with one another. See, and for this reason, all along I tell you that the single most important thing that you can do is to transfer all of your studies from pen and notebook to pencil and blank sheets. Okay. I know the transition takes a little bit of getting used to, but the advantages of that are tenfold. They are worth the effort. And of course, on these 2 factors, what happens is digital notes are the ultimate. But this is how I have studied. Okay. From 2012 to last 10 years, I have a total ban on all hard copy material. All my notes are in digital format. All books also I have available in soft copy format. Current events, newspapers, I don't read newspapers. I go to the website. There are thousands of different applications like Feedly, Instapaper, Pocket. If any of you are ever interested, I'll share those with you also. But why is this necessary? Because the first one, digital notes offers the maximum flexibility. What do I mean by flexibility? So I begin with my reference book. I split the screen. So half screen is the PDF, half screen is like Microsoft Word, OneNote, Evernote, whatever application you want to use. And as I am reading the book, parallelly, I am making my notes. And then I go on to NCERTs. And then NCERTs, I realize that these 3 points are additional points. So, but where do I put them? With pen and notebook, this becomes very difficult. There is no blank space. The structure of the notebook is very rigid. You can't add a page in between. So you might get creative, like staple a sticky note or use a whitener, but it's irritating. It's not fun. It doesn't look beautiful, right? But when we are talking about digital notes, I come across, okay, structure of parliament, composition of Rajya Sabha. This is what I've already written. And this 1 point is additional. So simply I take the cursor to the relevant point I hit enter, everything below is pushed down, and then I add a new sentence in between. So digital notes offers flexibility because every next time you read a new YouTube video, some blog post or something, you can keep on inserting content in between. For physical notes, for pencil and paper notes also, many a times we don't have space to insert new stuff. So we have to add it beneath. But see, Parliament, the chapter on Parliament, chapter 22, it's the biggest chapter in Lakshmikant. And there are thousands of things covered in that chapter. And at the very start of the chapter, you have composition of Parliament. And suppose your notes on that have like 15, 17 pages. And you don't have space in between to add that one sentence just. So you add it at the very bottom. But by the time you reach that point, you have read a lot of different content in between and the link is broken. This is what I mean by consolidate. Consolidate means that everything that is relevant should fit in one glance. एका नजरेमध्ये बसलं पाहिजे असं जे मराठीत म्हणतो आपण. Okay. All of that should fit in one eyesight, one glance at your notes. That is why you need to be able to create space in between. Second point is cut, copy, paste, delete your words, add a new word, everything. This is flexibility. So next time you come to read your notes, you might feel that this word is unnecessary. Select it, delete it. You might feel that I need to add a sentence over here. So you can quickly create space, add a new sentence. You might feel I need to change this word. You can change it. And most importantly, you might feel that you need to rearrange these points in certain way. This will happen many times. Okay. As you are reading your content, you might feel that, okay, I need to really understand this concept before I understand this concept. For example, in, I think, Lakshmikant composition of Parliament, the first thing he does is, okay, Parliament consists of President and 2 houses of Parliament. Lok Sabha has these many MPs, 530 from up to 530 from the states, up to 20 from union territories. Then Rajya Sabha, 12 nominated, etc., etc., etc. And after that, we come to the concept of bicameralism. What actually is you need to understand what is bicameralism before you understand composition of Parliament. So then later on, as you are reading the book, parallelly you are making your notes. But later on, when you're reading your notes, you might feel that this chunk of information needs to go up. That is easily achievable in digital notes. Okay. So again, there are many logistical constraints to digital notes. But the first most important is, of course, cost. Most of the applications that I can tell you, they are free. But if you only have your smartphone, you can make notes. I mean, all the applications that I would tell you, they are available on laptop and Android also. All of them are free. But one thing I can't compensate for is the small size of the screen. It becomes irritating after a point, and especially on that screen when half the screen is taken up by the keyboard. It's just so small. So it is irritating. At the minimum, you need a tab. And best possible if you have a laptop. And if you can't afford a laptop, then that is, agreed, it's a major problem. But I think that's the second most important. The first most important problem is our habits. For past so many years, we are already used to studying from physical everything, hard copy. We don't want to change our habits. So that's okay, I understand. I took the efforts to change it, and actually it was easier for me because from childhood I was always on my laptop doing sort of many things, most of the time gaming. But then when I came to UPSC, I realized that the same thing can be used for studying also. Okay. So for me, the transition was easy. But I realized that many of the students, they are not very comfortable with the idea of digitally studying. So I am always going to focus on the next best option. The next best option is pencil and blank sheets. Okay. Why? Because understand one thing, that there are 2 reasons. Pencil and blank sheets. The first reason I already told you. Flexibility, the most important characteristic of our notes. Blank pages and pencil is much more flexible than notebook and pen. You can't edit the content. You cannot rearrange the pages. All of that creates a lot of friction in our notes. Okay, that is why first is blank sheets and pencil offers a lot of flexibility. Now what happens? The second reason, many a times what happens is students, and most of you must have thought this also, you guys think that when I'm reading a content for the first time, or maybe the second and third time, I should read the content 3 or 4 times and then only I should go to making notes. Because it's the same problem with underlining. If you underline the content when you're reading it for the first time, everything seems important and you end up underlining the whole damn book, which basically means you have underlined nothing. Okay? It's the same problem with notes. The entire world tells us that when you are making notes, grab what is important from the book and write it down in your notes. But we have no idea exactly what is important, right? And then that is why we tell ourselves that I'll read the content maybe 2, 3, 4 times. And then when it's there already in my mind, then I will make notes. But pretty soon you realize that even after 2 or 3 readings, when you go to make notes, even those notes are not perfect. Because the reason that your notes are not perfect has nothing to do with the knowledge in your brain. You are not practicing making notes. What basically is happening is, this is like watching Sachin play on or Virat play on the screen and then thinking that, okay, I can pick up the bat and simply if I watch 100 innings of Virat Kohli, I'll be able to play like him. You can't get good at making notes, or like you can't get good at batting unless you yourself actually pick up the bat and go into the net and practice. So when you keep on procrastinating on making your notes, I'll read the book first and then I'll make notes. And then the thinking is that I'll read the book 3 or 4 times and then I will make notes. I will make notes only once and that should be the final product. This is never going to happen. Your first draft is never ever going to be your final draft. No matter how many times you read your book, better is that you read it once, you read it twice, maybe the boxes and underlining, and then straight away you go on to making notes. Okay. But at the same time, you should realize that this, whatever I am doing over here, is not the full and finished product. It is the raw product. I am going to have to go on modifying these notes later on. And modifying means maybe changing a few words, maybe changing the arrangement, maybe inserting new things in between. Okay. So you can think of making your notes as sort of like making a pot. So you take the clay and you dump it onto that wheel. You start spinning the wheel and then slowly you start making your notes and slowly the pot starts to take shape. Okay. That is how we make notes. But at the same time, you have to realize that you have to leave scope for your future self to revise and refine your notes. Even if you read the book 2 or 3 times and then you pick up a pen and a notebook and then you start to make the notes, thinking that I am going to make notes only once and those are going to be the best possible notes. They are not. Pretty soon you will realize that even those notes still need to be improved. But then the problem is, because you're using a notebook and pen, there is no scope for revision. You can't add stuff. You can't delete stuff. You can't copy and paste stuff. You cannot create new space in between. So this happens so much that at the end, we give up on the very concept of making notes. The reason is, when you are using pen and notebook, you are creating for yourself a lot of friction. Marathi mein friction means cut. And this word friction comes from Atomic Habits. Have any of you read? You know that book? It's a very famous book right now. I've read it many times. So basically, his principle in how do you break a bad habit, he says create more friction between you and the bad habit. So it should become difficult for you to go through with the habit. And equal and opposite is, how do you create a new habit? You reduce the friction between yourself and the new habit. Friction is how difficult is it to do that. So the approach that I am suggesting is that the very moment that you come across a content, just get cracking at making the notes. All the while, tell yourself that this first draft is going to be, it is a very rough draft. But you create your rough draft in such a way that you leave scope for your future self to go on revising and adding finishing touches. So every next time you read the notes, you read your own notes, you have to be thinking like an editor. Okay, change this word, delete this word, add a new sentence over here, rearrange these points, maybe insert something new in between over here. And ever so slowly, your notes go on getting better and better and better until a time comes when you feel that, okay, these are beautiful notes. You have reached that finishing point where your content is as short as it can be, but at the same time, it is delivering all the quality that you require. It is still successfully delivering the message that you want. And for this, you need flexibility. You need cross-referencing, which is the next point that I'm going to go. And overall, this point is, it can be linked with the very psychology of creativity itself. Making notes is a very creative process. Okay. You are creating new content. You are not just copy-pasting content. And actually, in the psychology of creativity, the single most important thing that can be taught is the quantity of ideas that you generate is many a times much more important than the quality of ideas. This is a common mistake which many students make, many creative thinkers make. They think that I am only going to come up with one idea, but that idea is going to change the world. Actually, if you study the minds of the greatest thinkers in history, you will realize that 99 out of 100 ideas they came up with were downright bullshit. They could have never worked in the real world. Okay. But then after all of this trash, they came up with one idea which ended up changing the world. What many of us do is that we pass self-judgment. Whenever we come up with a new idea, this will never work. Let's not implement this. And then an analogy which is given over here is our mind is like a faucet. Faucet is null. You switch it on and the water flows. But the water behind in the pipeline leading up to the faucet, at the start of the faucet is the dirty water, which means you let open the faucet and you let your mind run free. The initial ideas, content that you are going to come up with is going to be dirty water, trash water. Okay. But at that very instant, if you think, such dirty water, and you switch off the faucet, you will never reach the clean water at the back. So in generating ideas, you open the faucet of your ideas and you let the dirty water flow out. Don't pass self-judgment. Don't fear criticism from others. Just simply let the trash get out. And then after the trash, at the back end of the pipeline is the really clean water. Once that starts to flow out, that is when you start generating the great ideas. So these are two parallel approaches that I talked about. The common approach is when students are using pen and notebooks. Because this is so rigid, students think that I am only going to make notes once, and those are going to be the best notes ever. This is like thinking I am only going to come up with one idea, but it's going to be the single idea that changes the world. This approach doesn't work. Okay. What I am suggesting is that you read your content and then you just get cracking at your notes. But you change the system of making notes in such a way that you are leaving scope for your future self to go on refining your notes. Okay. In the literature on entrepreneurship, this approach is called as the lean startup approach. This is a book written by, forgetting the author, Eric Ries, Eric R-I-E-S. Okay. He studied the startups that came up in the 21st century. And then what he realized was that unlike the earlier approach to innovation, the old companies like IBM and whatnot, what they used to do is they used to work behind closed doors with a few selected number of scientists, and they used to develop new products. But they never brought out a product into the market until it was finally ready for the end consumer. But Facebook, Google, and most of the technology startups which are coming today, they are following an approach to innovation called as the lean startup, which means they water down their product to the bare bones and they just get cracking at it. And then they announce to the public that we are launching the beta version of this application. You sign up. They just make the application, even if it is a very rough application, it is full of bugs. Sometimes it crashes. They get to the minimum viable product. This is an actual term in entrepreneurship, MVP, minimum viable product. And they get it out into the market. And then they solicit feedback from the customers, and so slowly they keep on adding new modules and they go on changing their product. This approach to innovation has completely upended the field of innovation. How did Google manage to beat the once mighty Nokia? It's because of this. I don't think any of you must have ever used a phone containing Android 1.0. Yeah? No, right? So the time when I was in my 11th standard was when Android 1.0 was released. And it was, I couldn't believe that was a Google product. But slowly, and I don't think you might even remember that period, that there was once a period where you would be ridiculed if you didn't have a Nokia phone. Everyone had a Nokia phone. And now these days you get ridiculed if you do have a Nokia phone. That is how much Android and Samsung have conquered the market. The reason they used to do it is this. And in our own small way, that is what I am recommending. Get cracking at your notes, lean startup, but leave scope for your future self to go on refining your notes with minimum amount of friction until you reach that beautiful final product where your notes are pristine, where they are the smallest possible notes, but they contain all of the data and organized in a logical manner so that every time you read your notes, it is presented in a homogeneous and consolidated fashion and it refreshes your memory. Flexibility is the first one. The second most important point is cross-referencing. Okay. Those are the techniques that I'm going to tell you about cross-referencing. See, now the problem with physical notes, even if you are using pencil and blank pages, is that you cannot simply place your cursor on a spot, press enter and create new space. That is the inherent limitation of physical notes, right? If I am using Microsoft Word, space is not a limitation at all. I can create infinite amount of space between any two lines. That is not possible. That is not possible when we are talking about physical notes. Okay, physical notes, space is an inherent limitation. So it is not going to be possible for us to bring everything together physically. Digitally, it is possible to bring everything together. SRB, I wrote my content. Then NCRT, I inserted it in between. Then I went to as and when I am reading current events. Today, I saw some XYZ event. I think this is related to Parliament. So I create a note on that. I select it, Control X, enter, create space, Control V. So Parliament Parliament, and then immediately below that, we have the latest current event that is built on top of this static content. And then later on, I go to some blog, I read the PYQs, and then I think, okay, this PYQ is related to this point. Again, select, Control C, create space, Control V. So this should be the threefold sequence. Static content at the top. Based on that static content, you have your current events, and sprinkled across all of this is your PYQs. This creates a 360-degree picture of that particular topic. So tomorrow, or maybe 10-15 days, when you are reading, when you are revising, you pick up the note. You have everything you want in your hands, in that central place. You are reading the static content first, and the feedstock for that static content, the source material, the inputs for that static content, they came from your reference books and they came from your NCRTs. After your static content is over, as and when you're reading your current events, you see it immediately there. Even if you want to maintain your current events in a separate doc file, in a separate notebook, in OneNote, or maybe a separate Word document, it is very easy to hyperlink. Okay. I go to the Word file, I select the text that I want, and then I create some text in Word file, select Control V, it creates a hyperlink. So I am reading across all of this. I see that blue link. I click on it and straight away the second document gets opened up. It's very easy. Okay. Bringing everything together. But when we are talking about physical notes, beyond a point, actually bringing everything together on one page and paper is very difficult. First problem I told you, SRB notes, you are done with them. Then you go to NCERT and you are left wondering that I want this point to be in between these 2 points, but there's no space. What do I do? So you go to the very bottom of the note where there is still blank space left. Maybe you add a sheet. Then maybe if you are adamant, no, I wanted at that spot itself. Maybe you see some blank space somewhere. So you draw an arrow, you create a box. But how much are you going to do that? Beyond the point, there is no space going to be left. It will create a lot of clutter on your page also. Okay. So NCERT, you add it from the bottom. Further complicating this point is current events. Every next time you come across a new current event, how are you going to insert it in between? Okay. So your current events file compulsorily has to be somewhere different, somewhere separate, physically separate from your static content. But that does not mean that there should not be an air gap between the 2 files. What we have to come up with is a system for cross-referencing. Okay. So what I'm going to tell you is, when you are making your physical notes, your page could be sort of like this. If this is your page, first of all, always be sure that there is a left margin. Okay. But at the same time, if you are purchasing those blank sheets from the stationery book, insist that the shopkeeper gives you a set where there is a right margin also. Okay. Now, what I'm going to tell you is that contained in between is going to be everything that is the static content. But in the right margin, I am going to tell you a system for coming up with codes. The idea is that every single bit of information, piece of information in our stack has to be given a unique code, so that you look at the code and you directly know where to jump in your entire content. Okay. Now that is the system that I'm telling you over here. The first point is, first of all, let me clear all of this. So this is your half page. I want this space. So imagine that this is the right margin. Okay. So to the left of the outside of the screen is whatever your static content note is going to be. You are only seeing the partial page to this point. Okay. The first and the easiest one to understand is your PYQs. How do you integrate your PYQs into your static content? And this system of cross-referencing, I have actually borrowed it from data science. Anyone here who knows a little bit about data science, at least how to use Excel spreadsheets, what is an RDBMS system, little bit about SQL, concept of primary keys is nothing is familiar. Okay. So basically, in SQL, in data science, there is this thing called as RDBMS. It stands for Relational Database Management System. What is a database? It's basically a huge table, columns and rows. But within this huge table, one column contains a unique key for every row. So the logic is, even if there are millions of rows in a table, the alphanumeric key for every row has to be unique. It cannot be duplicated, because that is the way the computer understands, okay, go to this table and search for this key and then retrieve whatever you want in the related rows. Okay. So that is RDBMS system. So what we have to do is we have to come up with a coding system for every single piece of information in our knowledge base, so that we can simply use that code in our master node, and it is sort of like an outward pointing arrow. Okay. PYQs. One thing, what could you do? You download the PDF of the PYQ. You could cut those PYQs and then paste them in your notes. Okay. It's possible. Too much friction. Okay. But what we need is, we need to only tell ourselves that as your eyes are running down your notes, there is an outward pointing arrow which is telling you that at this spot, there is a PYQ and you know exactly where to find it. How do we do that? Point number one. Okay. From 2013 till 2022, for the past 10 years, you need to have a file of all PYQs, prelims and mains, segregated year-wise. This can be descending, this can be ascending. That doesn't matter, but maintain the sequence. That makes it easier to locate the exact question that I want. Okay. Now, suppose you read your reference book, you prepare the notes for your reference book. You go to NCERT, you insert the value-added material. Now we want to sprinkle our PYQs like salt and pepper at the end of the dish. How do we do that? Well, you need two things. The first one, you need to have a compilation of PYQs, but all PYQs. So let's say only prelims. For the past 10 years, the syllabus changed in 2013. So for us, past 10 years is important. 10 papers, 100 questions each, 1,000 questions in our database. Okay. You need those 1,000 questions segregated year-wise, which is easy because UPSC provides us with a year-wise paper itself. But then you should go on the internet and you should find out topic-wise segregated PYQs also. So your PYQ collection has to be segregated year-wise and also topic-wise. Okay. So once you are done with one chapter, you read it, you compress it, then notes, then NCERTs, then sit with your compilation of polity PYQs. 1,000 questions, 1,000 questions over past 10 years, there will probably be around 200 questions from polity. That's the weightage to that topic. Go year-wise and read those questions. At any point, if your mind clicks, okay, this question is, the answer is over here in my notes. Okay. That is when you make that cross-reference link. Again, if it were digital, I could have simply copied the question and pasted it over here. And this is not a one-to-one relation. Okay. This is a one-to-many relation. One PYQ can go in multiple places in your notes. Because if it's a question like 2 sentences, and which of the above are true? Okay. One sentence can be from chapter 13. Another sentence can be found in chapter 4. You might be left wondering, where do I insert this? The answer is both, at both places. Because to answer this question successfully, your mind has to fetch the data from chapter 13 and chapter 4. And that is why when you are revising chapter 4, there should be an indicator that, okay, a question was asked on this. So what sort of question is this? How do we do that with pencil and paper? The coding system is actually very simple. We are following in fact, in the very nature of the prelims paper itself, the code is contained. Now, the first thing is, the point to note is, there is only one prelims per year. Okay. So that is where we begin with the year. Let's say 2018. Next point. For the prelims of 2018, there are 4 sets, A, B, C, D. The questions are the same, but only the numbering is shuffled. And you only need to have one set in your collection, right? So let's say the question set available with you is set A. And then finally, out of that question paper set, the question that we want right now, let's say it's 47. So you write 47. So in your margin over here, this I wrote very big fat, but if you write it over here, the next time when your eyes are running down the notes, okay, your eyes will fall upon that code. And the beauty of this code is that the inherent logic in the code itself is telling you where to jump. This is for computer, you can write any gibberish and the computer will know exactly where to go. But for the human mind and human eye, there has to be a logic behind that. So 15, 20, 30 days later on, whenever you're reading your notes, you pick up your notes, your eyes are running down the page, and then suddenly you see, okay, 2018 A47. Immediately you take a detour. It's an outward arrow, right? You take a detour, you go to your shelf, you pick out 2018 prelims and you directly jump to question number 47. So, okay, this content, this sort of question. I see the link. This is what I mean by homogeneous. Now you'll begin to understand what I mean by hodgepodge study versus homogeneous study. What happens is you read your Lakshmikant at some random point. You read your NCERT at some other point. And then you read your PYQs at some other point. But all of this does not get knitted together to form a beautiful crochet or whatever piece of cloth you prefer. It has to all come together. So this is how you link your PYQs with your static content. You sprinkle it as salt and pepper at the end of a dish. Mains is actually even simpler. What you can do is 20, 20. So actually you can even skip the 20 part. I think for the, no one is going to give more than 92 more prelims, 88 more prelims. So 20 is going to be common for all. So you can simply write 20, GS 1 and let's say 9. Or even if you want to compress it further, you can simply go, you can go do away with the GS. So 21, 9. The first 20 is referring to the year. So this is something you have to remember. First 20 is referring to the year. Second one is referring to GS 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you don't want to forget that, you can again, if you want, you can write the words GS. That's up to you. I used to write the words. So 2020, and I used to write 2020 also. It looks better. So 2020, GS1, question number 9. See, for prelims, it is a one-to-many relation. This question can be located, can be referred to multiple places in your notes. Okay. That is more so when it comes to your mains questions. Because when you read a question, you have to ask yourself that the points that have to come in the answer for this question, where all are they located in my notes? Go to all of those places. Suppose there are 10 points for this question. You need to write 10 points. And those 10 points are located at 10 different places in your notes. Go to each and every one of those sections and write down this code in the margin. So tomorrow when you are reading that section, you refer to this mains question and you see the link. Okay, this point, this sort of question. And this is the point that I should be mentioning in this answer. What this does is your ability to predict questions goes on strengthening. And this is the ace of spades. Okay. In your prelims and your mains, even if you are able to predict one or two questions, that can make the difference between selection and rejection. The mental process that gets built up, static content, and every now and then there is a PYQ. First thing we can do is we can analyze our notes in a granular fashion. On the internet, everyone will give you a topic-wise segregation. So there will be pie charts, there will be diagrams, which topic has been asked how many times. But there is not even a single website which will tell you within Lakshmikant, which are the chapters which you have to focus on. This analysis will reveal that. So simply you can, after you are done sprinkling your PYQs onto your notes, you can simply go across each chapter and you can say, okay, this chapter, over the past 10 years, 10 questions, 5 questions, 7 questions. And then you arrange them horizontally, the pattern will start to emerge. These chapters are important for prelims. These chapters are important for mains. So this is important for being able to, okay, these are the sort of questions which have been asked till now. So then in the future, these are the sort of questions that may be asked. This is always a game of probabilities. But we have to strengthen our ability to be able to predict the questions, to generate questions in our mind. And in the revision lecture also, I told you, self-quizzing is a very important way of revising the topic. So your mind should constantly be working on coming up with questions. I would in fact say that even better than solving questions, coming up with questions revises the content much better. So this is how we integrate PYQs into our static content notes. Next point is integrating current events. Okay. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky, because the fundamental challenge for integrating current events is that we are going to note down current events in date format, chronologically. But we don't have to study them chronologically. We want to revise them topic wise. See, no one is going to ask you which were the significant events from the month of August 2020. UPSC doesn't care. Okay. What you need to be able to do is you have to structure your notes in such a way that tomorrow, 1 month, 1 year from today, you have to be able to revise all the current events of polity in a consolidated manner. Okay. So for this, what you're supposed to do is your note on current events is, of course, going to be physically separate from your static content, because as I told you, for pencil and paper notes, space is always a problem. Okay. Now, what you should be doing is your current events notes should be organized date-wise. So what I recommend to students is, again, current events notes are also pencil and blank sheets. Okay, that is common. But you come up with that plastic file. It has sort of like a buckle on top, and you open the file, it expands, and there are subfolders within the broader file. I hope you can picture it, right? So purchase a file which has 12 compartments. Okay, 12. The number is important, one for each month. So the entire file contains current events from 1 year, and from left to right, you go from January to December. So for this month, your notes for August month should be contained in the 8th compartment. Okay. And within 8th compartment also, from left to right, arrange your pages date-wise. Okay. Leftmost is 1st of August, rightmost will be 31st of August. Okay. One step further, every day when you sit down with your current events to write your notes, okay, pick out a blank sheet of paper. So there might be some days when there is a lot to note down, and your notes for that day, they go on to 10 pages. Okay. So then at the end of the day, those 10 pages, you staple them together, and you insert them at their appropriate place. Okay. And finally, the most important point is, on every page, in the top right-hand corner here, write down the date. So it can be 16th, 8, 16/8/22. 10 pages, all stapled together, and in the top right-hand corner, the date is mentioned. So it becomes very easy to find it. Okay. And then next point is, on this page, every time you write down something, give it a number. So this can be 1, then 2. And on certain days, there is so much to note down that you can go up to 20, 25 on a particular day also. So it's 10 to 12 pages and 25 different bullet numbers, 25 different issues. Now understand that this box, it is going to be a mixed bag of all current events. Okay. So the first point may be economy, the second may be IR, the third may be environment. It's all mixed together. That doesn't matter. Okay. But in this structure, what we have done is, for every note, inherently, we have come up with a unique ID. Kaise? We are taking advantage of the fact that the date on each day is in itself a unique number. Have you realized this ever? No date will ever repeat itself, right? So point number 2 over here, we can write this as 16/8/22 bracket number 2. This unique ID in itself is giving us this inherent logic And now suppose this point is, let's say this note is related to environment. Now this becomes very easy. You think that suppose recently this Prime Minister Modi ji, he added 2 promises to India's nationally determined contributions at the Glasgow summit. Okay. So then what can you do? You can, if you are studying from, if your primary source of revision is your PMF IAS notes or your Shankar IAS notes, you go to in the index, wherever INDCs are given, you go to that, and in the right hand side margin, you simply write 16, 8, 22 bracket 1. So that 1 month, 2 months, 1 year from today, when you are once again revising INDCs, your eyes are going down this, and in the right margin, you see 16, 8, 22. Suppose you are revising environment in February of 2023. Still, this is not lost. Your eyes are going down over here, and then you see 16, 8, 22-2. You don't have to search for it. See, these are very minute things. Searching for it, rummaging through your notes, trying to find out where it is. All of this adds frustration. What you do is, so it's 2023. 2022's file is kept somewhere safe. Okay. Now, the one discipline that you have to get into is keeping things in their proper place, because otherwise this coding system is useless. 2018 A14 is telling you to go to question number 14 in set A of 2018 PYQ, but you don't know where the hell you have kept it. So these are very small disciplines that you have to come up with. There should be a dedicated place on your shelf where the stack of PYQs is kept. You should always make it a point that it is arranged sequentially, either top to bottom or bottom to top, whatever. And simply get into the habit that whenever you pick out a question paper from that bunch, keep it back at its intended place. Otherwise, what we do is we segregate it year-wise, but then we pull out 2018, we read through it, and then we simply keep it at the top of the stack. And we do this multiple times, and the entire card deck gets shuffled. We have no idea where to find. And then the next time you want to find a question, you have to keep sorting through the entire bunch. And that bunch gets this big. Prelims and mains, if you compile it together, actually, it's better to keep it separate. But even then, it will be like this huge bunch. And it becomes irritating to sort through it, all of it. So maintain that discipline. Even your current events file. If you leave it at your friends, you give it to someone and he or she never returns it, then I can't do anything. Okay. These are simple disciplines you have to maintain. But if you do maintain that, what does this code tell you? And you mention it, you mention this code somewhere in your notes. February 23. You are revising environment, and for the sake of argument, let's say you are using your textbook. So as your eyes are running down the textbook, you see this code in the margin, and you realize that on this particular page, there is something current event related to this. What do? You pick up 2022 file. From the left, go to the 8th compartment, and then from left hand side, since the pages are stapled together, your fingers will be able to tell. So this is date number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And since at the top right hand, we have already written the date, you go to August 16th. But even within August 16th, there are 10 pages. We don't want to search through all 10 of them. So an additional point that you can do is, whenever you are coming up with this dog ear, this concept is called as a dog ear. Okay. What some people do is they add a colored sticky note to the side also. You can also do that. What they do is that on this page, what are the points which are contained? So there are 1 and 2. Okay. So you are flipping through the file, then you see, okay, 16th August ka punch, I found it. So 1 and 2, I don't need it. And suppose you want to go like 8 or 10, something. So you feel first page, second page, third page, fourth page, you see number 8 written. You directly pick up that page, and the only searching left to do is front side or back side. That's pretty easy. So from the point that your eyes fall on this code to the point that you actually reach that current event, not even 60 seconds have passed in between. I mean, how difficult is it? Especially if your study desk is well organized. You are sitting in front, one corner PYQ stack, another corner current events files. So 16.8, pick up the file, compartment 8, left 16th of August, go to point number 8, pick it up. Okay. Essay. Where your book ends, your current events begins. So actually your notes or your book, the right and left hand side margin for your book or for your current events, the entire right hand margin should be filled with these codes and they are pointing outwards. Some are pointing to your PYQs, some are pointing to your current events file. And there is a third concept which should be pointing to your digital collection. Okay. What do I mean by that? No matter whether you are studying from physical notes or digital notes, every single one of us refers to some or the other digital content in addition to the physical content, right? I mean, I don't think there is a total hermit. He only reads books, nothing. Are any of you guys like that? You refer to. So in addition to the books, we view YouTube channels, we follow Instagram pages, we follow some Telegram channels, maybe we refer to some blog post or something like that. But the problem with integrating digital content into your physical notes is there is an air gap in between. If both of them are digital, it's easy to reference them. If both of them are physical, even then it is easier to reference them. We just saw 2 examples of that. But the problem arises when we are talking about the digital combining it with the physical. That is where the problem occurs. Okay. So how do we solve that problem? The principle is the same. For every image, every web page, every video, every blog post, there has to be a unique ID. And there is, we call it the URL. Uniform Resource Locator. The thing in the browser, the long thing in the browser, youtube.com/ and then everything after that doesn't make sense to us. And that's the problem with URLs. They don't make sense to us. There is no inherent logic in them. There is actually a logic to them. Okay. And if you know how to read a URL, that /, it makes sense. But to human eye, it doesn't make sense. Okay. So what you have to do if you want to integrate your digital content with your physical content is you have to create a spreadsheet. You can use Microsoft Excel. Irritating. You can use Microsoft Excel, or I will recommend that you use Google Sheets. Both of them are free. Both of them are equally powerful, but Google Sheets is synchronized with the cloud. So the chances of data loss is very small. Now, I am not going to tell you to come up with complicated formulas, nothing. Okay. Your spreadsheet is 1 page and it only has to have 2 columns. So it looks like this. The first column is going to be your serial number. On this serial number, you are going to go on typing 1, 2, 3, 4 for every row. Okay. And you don't have to actually go on typing them. You can get your friend to do it for you. If you type 1, 2, 3 and you select all of them and you drag it down, then in 5 seconds, you can create up to 10 million numbers. Those numbers will last you for the next 7 lifetimes. You don't ever have to worry about creating a number again. Computing power is also not an issue. One spreadsheet does not become that heavy. Even if your mobile phone has 4 GB RAM, one spreadsheet is very easily compatible. It won't take a very long time to load. Okay. So first column is serial number. Second column is the URL. So this spreadsheet becomes sort of like a inbox for all the digital content that we are collecting. And then what you have to do is maybe some random day somewhere you are viewing some YouTube video, you're reading some blog post, you are going through some Instagram post. You think, okay, this is interesting. This is interesting. This is interesting. What you simply do is go to Android Share, copy the link and paste it at the bottommost of the URL. Okay, of the row, the latest row which is available. And then take the corresponding number and use it somewhere in your current events notes. So tomorrow, day after, 10, 15 days from today, you come across a YouTube video on composition of parliament. And then as you are viewing that video, you realize that this is explained very well. Actually, at this point, when I read it from Lakshmikant, it wasn't very clear. But this 10-minute video is solving a lot of my doubts. But you have to remember that you view the video once, but 10, 15 days from today, you are almost going to have forgotten all of it. Okay. So what you do is you share the link, you insert it in the spreadsheet, and let's say that it is inserted at row number 4. You go to your current event, you go to your static content notes or your book, and you simply write number 4 and circle it. So this circle is basically to remind yourself that any number contained in a circle is referring to the spreadsheet. Okay. Now tomorrow, 10, 15, 30, 40, 50, how many ever days in go between? The next time that you come to revise your polity, again, your eyes are going down the static content and the arrows are pointing outwards to PYQs and current events file. And then suddenly you see number 4. And then as your content goes on going forward, this number can also be like 11,537. Doesn't make a difference, right? So your spreadsheet will become huge. Maybe your rows can go to anywhere between lakhs of rows. But that doesn't mean that the efforts have increased, because for spreadsheets, one beautiful function is Control F. You see 11537. You open your mobile, open your spreadsheet, go to the search bar and type 1153. Unless that particular number is contained in some URL, most probably you will directly be taken to that row. Even if one or maybe you may have to press down arrow once or twice. Okay. So 11537. You see the spreadsheet, click on the URL, you're directly taken to that video. Every other method adds unnecessary steps to the proceeding. So suppose you want to save YouTube videos. What could you do? You could write down the video name. You could write down the channel name. All of this will work, no problem. Okay. But it makes searching for that difficult. What if the channel is gone? What if the channel changes his name? What if the video is lost somewhere in the depth? Okay. Especially if you're talking about current events, you search any current event on YouTube, there are thousands of videos on that topic. How do you know which is the one you want? Okay. The only unique thing about everything on the internet is the URL. But the problem with the URL is it doesn't make sense to our eyes. And that is where this spreadsheet comes into play. It becomes a collection box. As you are surfing the internet different times and different days, anything you feel interesting, clip it from the internet, throw it in your spreadsheet. Take the corresponding number and use it in your notes. Then later on, when you're reading your notes, that number will tell you which row to go on your spreadsheet. Simply click the URL and the system will do the rest. Very quick and easy way. It adds only 1 second to our effort, but it adds a lot of value to our knowledge, to building up our knowledge. Okay. And final point that goes into this is the fourth thing, cross-referencing, that you should be doing is, coming back to the slide, we covered 3 points. Okay. The first one, PYQs, prelims and mains. I told you. Current events, 7th July 2022, bracket 1. This is directly telling you where to go. Internet, images, videos, the spreadsheet, I already told you. But final point remains is your reference books. There is a very important reason why you should make it a point to cross-reference your static content, the notes of your static content with the source material also. In your notes, in the margin, at different places, you should be able to see where I got this note from, even for static content. And for that, I want to give you a demonstration. This must have happened to many of you. Okay. And this is the last point in the ICC. Integrate, bring everything together, consolidate, rearrange it, so that it is in a logical format. And then final point is compress. You want to shorten everything. Now, everyone has tried this at some or the other point. The first most important thing for compress is forget grammar. Your notes are for you. They are not for someone else. One common question I get every time is that for me, like, Dada, you are saying digital notes are very cool, but in your mains, we have to write the answer with pencil and paper, right? So, when I am writing my notes physically, as it is, the content is passing from underneath my pen. So I'm getting used to writing it. This is confusing apples and oranges. Okay. 3 sessions ago, I told you that everything we do comes under practice or study. Study is taking in new information. Reading books, revising and making notes comes under studying. And practice is applying the knowledge that you have built up. So PYQ analysis, mains answer writing, and PYQ and MCQ solving is practice. And many of the mistakes that we make, they happen because we confuse study and practice. This is one example of that. Note making is not equal to answer writing. The two skills are completely different. When you are making notes, you are making notes to make your revision easier. When you are writing, you are practicing a totally different skill set altogether. So making notes with the intention of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, answer writing and notes, is like trying to play cricket with a baseball bat. Yeah. 2 different sports, 2 different equipment, 2 different approaches. Okay. So for me, see, it's not like I never did answer writing, right? But my notes for revision were in digital format. And then at a different place and a different time, when I am writing answers, I am exclusively focusing on answer writing. I am telling myself that whatever I am writing over here, I am not going to use this to revise. Revision is from here and answer writing is over here. Okay. Don't try to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Your notes are not your pseudo practice for answer writing. That is, do it separately. Okay. That is why in your notes, do not go for grammatically correct sentences. You have to trust your mind to fill in the gaps. I'll show you an example in the subsequent in this subsequent slide. So what I've done over here is, on one side, I have taken a screenshot from Spectrum's Brief History of Modern India, just 1 chapter. And on the right side, what you are seeing is the notes that I have made from this. Okay. So as you can see over here, we'll get to this point later on. As you can see, not a single sentence is grammatically correct. If, and, but, the, or, the words which make the sentence grammatically correct, we don't need them. When you are making the jump from the book to your notes, your focus should always be on the keywords. And what are keywords? They are those trigger words, the words that contain the gist, the meaning of everything. You separate those words and then you read them later on and they will make sense to you. Okay. But this last sentence, they will make sense to you. This is where the catch is. And some of you may have already experienced this. This is a very common dilemma for those who make notes. The common question is, how much do I write? How much detail do I go into? Okay. And why is this a dilemma? Because if you write too little, this may have happened to some of you already. You write very short, only important words. Okay. The notes are finished quickly and you feel nice. Okay. But then about 10 or 15 days later, when you try to read your own notes, your face is like this emoji. We are like, what the hell is this? I wrote this note, but now I can't remember what I wrote. So why this happens is, the moment when you were writing that note, the parent content was still fresh in your mind. The source material for that note, your reference book, it was still fresh in your mind. But then as time went on, the link became hazy. And then 15 days later, when you're reading your notes, only those words, they are not sufficient enough to trigger your memory. Now, as I had told you, how do you do revision readings? You open the page and your eyes will jump over the keywords. And before that, try to remember, active recall. Okay. But the beauty of this is, as your eyes are jumping over the keywords, if you feel that I have forgotten this point, well, you can expand, you can zoom into it right then and there because it's right there. But when you are separating those keywords onto a separate page, there is no link backwards to the original content. That is what we have to develop. So what happens is, for many students, they write very small notes, chota. Okay. But then time goes in between, and then 10 or 15, 20 days later, when they are trying to revise their notes, they have no damn idea what they had written because the link with the parent content was lost. Okay. And once this happens once or twice, students go to the other end. The attitude now is better safe than sorry. Instead of writing little and then forgetting what I had written, I will write detailed. So grammatically correct sentences, and then the sentences become very long. But then what happens is, if you write too much, the problem is you are killing the purpose of compression. Basically, you are writing the entire book again. I mistakenly typed reading over there. So what is the solution to this dilemma? It's this. The solution is successive compression. This part we have already covered. We go on compressing the content with every next step. Okay. The additional part is with backlinking. So what is backlinking? Unidirectional linking is A is linked to B. So I click on A and it jumps to B. Okay. But backlink is when I click on A, it goes to B. But for B, there is a footnote which is created, which tells me that A is linking to this. In Microsoft Word, okay, if you hyperlink content together, you click on one, it jumps to the other. But if you directly go to B, you have no idea to know that there is something leading up to B. That is what a backlink does. It creates a backlink to the original content. So you can use this to go on building a web of your notes. Okay. How do we do that? So what happens then is, we are now free to write as short as we want, because we know that in 10, 15, 20 days, when I'm revising these notes again, if I can't understand the reference of a particular point, I can directly jump to the book where this content is found. And then I can pull the notes from there. Now, how do we do that? Look at this. There are a few rules to follow. This is Spectrum, the first phase of revolutionary activities. That is the name of the chapter. And the subheading in that chapter is the revolutionary program. Now, the first point to remember when you are making static content notes is, as far as possible, follow the heading structure and chapterization structure of the book itself, the master book that you are using. So in my notes also, you will see that for this note, the heading is the same. The subheading, revolutionary program, it is also the same. What this does is that if something beneath and then I can't understand that what is this I had written, I can simply compare the heading of my note with index of Spectrum and directly jump to that chapter. Now for Spectrum, this much would be sufficient because Spectrum is broken down into very small subheadings. But there are certain books that you have a chapter and the chapter is 30 pages long and there are no subheadings in that chapter. Then what are you going to do? Okay. So step number 1 is adopt the structure that the author has created for you, which is the chapterization and the subheadings. Okay. And then go one step forward is when you open a page, the first thing that you should do, and again, as I told you, all of these little tricks, they add only 5 seconds to our efforts. Okay. Once you jump to a book, in the left hand or the right hand margin, scan the entire book and give a number to every single paragraph on that page. Okay. From left to right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, whatever. Okay. And every new page you start from 1. Don't go on till like infinity. Then it will go into the thousands and it will become very difficult. Okay. So page number 283, 1, 2, 3, 4. Most of the UPSC textbooks, you won't have to go beyond 10. Okay. Lakshmikant, you might have to go a little bit more because it's 2 columns on 1 page. So you have to go double side. Okay. But even that's not very difficult. Go on numbering each and every point. So what happens is, when you are making a note on that topic, as you can see over here, in whatever I've written in yellow, now this second 284-2 is a typing mistake. It should have been 283. What I've done is 283-1. This is a unique code that I have written. So 10, 15, 20 days later, all those points below, if I can't remember where did I get this from, 283-1 is telling me, go to page number 283 on spectrum, and from top to bottom, go to the first paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph. Now, you can't be more granular than paragraph level. I mean, it doesn't make sense numbering every sentence, right? That makes it practically very difficult. But paragraph is good enough. I mean, how big can a paragraph be? It's at the most 10 sentences. So we can read that much pretty quickly. Okay. So when you are following this method, you are free to write as compressed as you want without the fear of losing the message later on. Okay. So this is integrate. And what you can do is you can integrate multiple books into this also. So the first book that you are using, that book will be the framework of your notes. You follow the chapterization structure of the first book. And then once you're reading the second book, every time you read a chapter from the second book, first run through the same chapter in your notes. So you will quickly refresh whatever you already have. So since I'm talking about spectrum, I can continue this example. You read Spectrum, Mutiny of 1857. And then as time progresses, maybe you have history as your optional. You pick up Shekhar Bandyopadhyay or Grover and Grover. Okay. And then as there is in Grover and Grover also, there is a chapter on 1857. So as you are reading that chapter, take a pause before reading the chapter. Run through your notes on 1857 and refresh the points that you already have. No duplication of effort, only value addition. And then start reading the book Grover and Grover. And every single time you will realize, oh, this is something new. This is something new. This is something new. Okay. And then take those points and add them to your notes. And for that particular bullet point or bunch of bullet points, you can add a different quotation. So for here, it can be something like SP 283-1. So that SP spectrum. And then you can later on, you can write GG 124-5. GG is Grover and Grover. The coding can be anything. It's up to you. Okay. But SP 283 will tell you go to page number 283 of spectrum and paragraph number 1 on that page. GG 124-5 will tell you go to Grover and Grover page 124, 5th paragraph from the top. Simple. Numbering takes only 5 seconds, but then there is an outward arrow. So now understand the grand picture of what I am telling you. When your notes are ready, how should they look? One single page will be, so there is a left margin. Everything in between over here is your static content. And then for the right margin, there will be outward pointing arrows. One can be to your PYQs, another to your current events, a third one to your spreadsheet, okay, and a fourth one to our reference book. All bases are covered. Once you are, no matter how much in the future you are, once then this master note, now I used the word earlier also, master note, because it's everything together. This master note becomes your primary source of reference. Or if you want to use a book, then your book becomes your master note. And in the right and left margin of that book, there are outward pointing arrows. Okay. So instead of our note, you can use our book. It's the same purpose. Okay. Your eyes are running. Then how do we revise? Your eyes are running down the content. And every single time you see an outward pointing arrow, you take a detour, PYQ, come back. Then go down, current event, read it, come back. Then go down, spreadsheet, detour, click the link, whatever image, video, whatever, view it, come back, continue. And then for particular point, if you feel there's something not clear over here, no problem. Where did you get that from? Go to the original book. Only read that portion again. And then you maybe want to modify your note because it's either too short or too small, or you left out some important detail. Go on refining your note. But every single time, there is a link. Where did you get this from? Simple. Okay.
This one was for the physical note or
for digital, actually, it becomes much simpler, right? You can simply copy paste everything in between. But if you're reading your books from, let's say, PYQs. So PYQs, you take it onto a separate Word file and you can hyperlink it. That is one option. Or you can simply copy the PYQs, create space and paste it at different points. That is one option. Current events, same. Again, paste it in between or hyperlink it with one another. Okay. Reference book, if you're reading hard copy reference book, then you have to create superscript, margin notes. All those features are available in Word also. Okay. So that doesn't make much of a difference. Multimedia, digital links is the most easiest. Directly take the link and paste it wherever we want in the Word. The only problem is when you're linking your digital notes with your physical textbook. If you are using reference book in PDF, then it's actually even much easier. There are many powerful note-making apps on the internet. Most of you must have only heard about OneNote, Evernote, Microsoft Word, Google Keep, Apple Notes. Okay. But in modern day, there are, especially in the past 2-3 years, there has been an explosion of many note-taking apps which are based on markdown format. And they are called as bi-directional linking notes. So there is Notion, there is RemNote, there is Workflowy, there is Obsidian. So the list is endless. Dynalist, I can tell you many, many more. Okay. I use RemNote. RemNote. Okay. So it's this one.
Is it free?
Yeah, it has a paid plan also, but it is free also. So this one, RemNote. That's my personal favorite. But Notion is also pretty good. And there's another app called Rome Research, ROAM. But that's very costly. It doesn't have a free plan. And the paid plan is $15 per month, which is, sorry, boss. Right. Okay. Chalo. That's it for today.